Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet Workspace, episode 3. Excited to have you guys here. Today, it's going to be me and Stefan. And so let's go ahead
What's up,
and
everybody?
meet the team. So we got me, the one hosting this Planet Workspace. I am a Google developer expert in the category of AppSheet. And just we'll see the acronym GDE. What that stands for is Google Developer Expert. It is a program by Google who determined that you are a expert in a specific platform, in this instance AppSheet, and that you contribute to the community by advocating or educating people in that platform. And so we also have with me my boss at Crew Technologies, Stefan Quartermont.
What's
Also,
up, guys?
AppSheet GDE. You want to talk about yourself a little bit?
Today I'm wearing a purple shirt and going to show you some AppSheet stuff. So excited to be hanging out, getting to talk about the technology, and hopefully give you guys some ideas to make better applications, to utilize more of the powerful tools that are out there to solve real problems that you're working on. So excited to be here. Thanks, Cam, for hosting.
For sure. Have not even thought about this question, but as a quick icebreaker, right now, for any big company that people here would know of, what's an AI implementation that you would add to their business? It's on the spot. You go to Costco and hate something about it that AI would help, or you think that something could be better, ordering something at Best Buy or something?
I'm gonna go with Chick-fil-A. Okay, I think at Chick-fil-A, the order experience, I think, could be AI generated. Down here in Texas, it's blazing hot, and so when we go through the Chick-fil-A drive-through with my wife and my daughter, and we're trying to get us some nuggies, there's all the Chick-fil-A attendants out there taking orders, and they're just melting. They're like wearing like ice vests. I'm like, man, you guys are suffering.
It's like
down here. Somewhere nice.
It's like the military, Chick-fil-A,
Colorado.
every other job.
Pretty hardcore.
People.
But yeah. I also half the time don't know exactly what I'm going to order. So I would love to like ask a thing, just, hey, what do you think I should order? I honestly ask the attendant that most of the time. It's like, what's your favorite thing? What'd you eat today?
Which Chick-fil-A is literally just, do you want chicken in between two pieces of bread? Do you want chicken with between nothing, or do you want chicken on top of some green lettuce? That's what you get to choose at Chick-fil-A. And so,
well, some of us have a hard time choosing. All right, Cameron.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Well,
right, who are you going to solve?
Man. I was thinking about Chick-fil-A after just like expanding on an idea, but choosing something different. I think utility companies, I imagine they have some sort of like algorithm for what you can expect for future months in the summer and stuff. But it'd be pretty cool if maybe if you had a Google Nest or whatever they're called, the Nest thermostats, if it kind of imported that data and said, hey, you've been keeping your house at this temperature whenever on average it's this temperature outside, maybe we can estimate a specific efficiency of your house, and then pair that with information on expected temperatures for the weather outside in your area. And then on top of that, allow you to have on the website some sort of like dial where you can say like from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I want to keep my house at 74. And then from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., I want to keep it at 70 degrees. and then it just spit out an estimated price, and then you can like fine tune it. That'd be awesome.
That would be pretty great.
So,
You got me going on an idea. If I was going to one up that, I don't know if it's true one up, but having like a complete like bill ingester. So like most utilities or like home bill companies have some sort of usage related to them. So whether it's your water bill or
mhm,
trash or power or internet consumption or all of your Apple's subscriptions to the App Store, like have a bill consolidator and just be able to ask questions like, my bill is higher this month.
mhm,
Why was it higher? And
mhm.
just no.
Yeah, especially if you have auto pay and
Yep.
you don't necessarily pay attention to which bill is costing what a number. You just recognize that this account had more money taken out this month than it usually is. And so you just ask the AI that's running all that information, what the heck? Why you do that?
Where'd my money go? Who took my
um,
money?
we'd love to hear from the chat if you guys have any revolutionary AI ideas that would change your life, that a big company can implement. Also, if you guys want to throw in the chat, where you guys at? Um, I'm over in Fort Worth, Texas, and Stefan, where are you at?
I'm a little further down south in Bryan, Texas. You like baseball, which I don't. A&M just
Not
got
anymore.
second in the College World Series. Much
You ain't
drama
heard?
over the coach. Everybody's crying.
That's traumatic, actually. 24 hours before, he said, I'm never going to leave this place when I took this job. I chose to be here forever. Less than 24 hours, went ahead and signed a position with their rivals.
Don't make me turn this into an ethics webinar and talk about all the
Just
ways that our society's messed up because people don't love the tell them the truth. Just be honest. Come on.
all right. Well, we'll go ahead and hop into this webinar. First, we have Stefan.
All
Go
right.
ahead. Take it away.
So on the AI train, we're going to explore, an extended use case per the last demo I did that was AI related. We're going to look at how to utilize Gemini's multimodal model to get data out of a PDF, and compare two PDFs that we give it that are loaded through AppSheet. So putting data in AppSheet, sending it over to the Gemini model, having Gemini reason against it and extract structured data for us to put back in our app.
Let's go.
I like Caleb's idea. AI powered company wiki. We should do
Yeah,
that
that's a pretty common
for our
thing,
own company.
that Google's pushing on their the Gen AI roadshows is feeding Gemini your business info and having a language model run off of that and ask your data questions, essentially. Really cool. But especially for some companies that probably have a pandemic of all this business jargon, acronyms, abbreviations, just be able to be like, what is this 12 letter syllable? What does this 12 letter acronym mean?
Every
But go
company
ahead.
has them. The bigger they are, the worse it gets. So, what we're going to solve today for some imaginary large company who's going to buy this idea from me for billions of dollars is we're going to streamline a single piece of the recruiting process. So, usually in your recruiting pipeline, you have people that will submit their resumes or express interest in a position. And then somebody has to capture that information and enter it into a structured tool. So, step one, the PDF comes in, let's say the inbox. Let's say they don't have an applicant tracking system that's configured to their email. Somebody's got to input that into the applicant tracker application. Maybe they're going to extract some of the data from the PDF manually or interpret certain things, add it to the system, and then they need to review it against the job description and categorize it or score it and decide if they should go to the first level interview or not. So I'm kind of imagining you've got opportunities for input error. This is at minimum a 15-minute task and is a manual step that a person currently has to do before it goes to that first level interview. So I'm going to optimize this using AppSheet and Gemini and see if I can get it down to a single form entry. So let's see what it would look like if we applied Gemini. Bang. We're going to shrink it down to less than a minute. And technically I could automate this to pull it right out of the inbox if I wanted to, but for today's demo, we're not going to do that. So we cut a whole step out and remove the need for a human in the loop during that part of the process. The resume just gets added to the app and is auto-reviewed by Gemini, compares it to the job description that they applied against, and determines if they should pass to the next stage. What's up, Rodrigo? Repping Brazil. Welcome, buddy. All right, I'm going to share my screen and show you guys how this app works. Also, just a little teaser while I'm pulling the screen up. This app is available for you to check out, copy, clone. I've got all the code on a GitHub repository. There's a post on the AppSheet community forum about it. We're going to link it down in the description at some point if it's not already there. But here we are. I'm in my resume review app, and I've got a couple of resumes that I'm going to load in. First, I'm going to show you what we can expect. I'm going to switch over to the job descriptions, and we're going to look at this software engineer job description. So this is for an imaginary entry-level software engineering position for the AppSheet product inside of Google. You have to know Python. You should have a bachelor's degree. I don't know that AppSheet uses Python anywhere under the hood. I'm totally making this up. But like there's some common Python frameworks you should know. Obviously, you should be familiar with GCP, right? So we're kind of seeing what we're expecting someone's qualifications to be for this entry-level position. Now, I've got a couple of job descriptions that I will load in here in just a second. I'm going to switch over to them. There's two applicants. On the left, we have Rosa Dominguez, completely fictional person, and John Smith on the right, again, completely fictional person, and two resumes. I've highlighted the strong resume on the left, the weak resume on the right, and just highlighted a few pieces that make this a standout resume, and we'll see if Gemini gets them. So this person has team leadership experience, 10 years in the industry. Their skill sets include full stack development and Python specifically. They have projects down at the bottom that are Python related projects. So experience, relevant skills, and ability to lead teams. You're like, this is a qualified person. In fact, maybe an overly qualified person. On the right, we have John Smith, who is very eager to learn, but maybe doesn't have the right education credentials and only has a basic knowledge of web development frameworks. So just basic HTML, CSS, and a lot of his experience is irrelevant to the position as it's written. So this is probably not a strong candidate. Let's see what Gemini thinks about these two in comparison to our software engineer job description. And what we'll expect Gemini to do is to extract from the resume the name, their email, a phone number, summarize their fitment, and give them a score 0 out of 10 for how well they fit for this position. So I'm going to click add. I'm going to say they are applying for the software engineer role. And let's start with our man, John. John's eager. John's the early bird. behind the scenes, I'm using Google Apps Script to handle this request, and it is facilitating an API call to the Vertex AI platform using the Gemini 1.5 multimodal model and sending along the way both the job description and the resume, as well as a prompt to extract this information. So I can see that it properly got the name. The email came out appropriately. It got the number, and it gave him a fitment score of 5. So he possesses basic skills, but lacks specialized qualifications, right? His cashier experience demonstrates his ability to handle customer interactions, but it doesn't demonstrate the technical skills needed for software development. I think that's a pretty good summary. So let's see how John fares against a newcomer in the recruiting ranks. And if I'm giving anybody, you know, PTSD right now because you're in the application process and stressing you out that AI's, you know, making decisions about your hiring, sorry. That's why I like AppSheet. It's kind of a renegade technology. Go out there, learn it well, make a living. All right. We get Rosa. She's bumped up in the list automatically, tied for the top with our Jane Doe. So she's highly qualified. Technologies and cloud platforms are as expected, and she has some leadership skills. It's pretty good. I will take you behind the scenes and kind of show you how I configured this. James, good question. Is it possible to directly generate and download a PDF in AppSheet? So we're actually going to cover this question in more depth later, but you can create one, generate it, and then make it appear in the app and then click on it to download it. But it's not something that you could do completely automatically. So you can't force a user to download something after you in the midst of a generating process. So, yep. Let's switch over here to our app editor. And I have my one bot for this app because it's a super complicated app. Whenever a resume is added or updated, I'm going to run 2 steps. First step is the Gemini resume analysis. This is a call a script task, and it is pointing to this app script project and running this function. I have a lot of other functions in here for use for other AI demos, so you can access those and use them for whatever you would like. And it requests 4 parameters. So I need to send 4 pieces of data along with this so that this function can properly give me results. So I need the name of the resume and what file folder in Google Drive it's going to look for. Look for that file in, because AppSheet doesn't allow you to directly send the file through to the script. So you have to have the script go fetch it from Drive. And the same thing with the job description. And then it's going to return some data. And then I'm going to take that data and I'm going to update my resume field or my resume analysis record with the results. So I'm going to pull the name, phone, email, fitment score, and the summary. All right. I'm going to show you one more thing before we dive into a couple of pro tips and unique things that happen through this script, things that are nice to know. Let's take a look at the prompt. The prompt is nothing magical. There are way more complex and intelligent prompts that you can do to get deeper analysis, more nuanced information, but this is fairly straightforward. So I'm asking the model, analyze this resume against the job description provided. I'm not even telling it which is which. I'm letting it decide that, so I could be more specific. and then return the following analysis items in JSON format. Find the name, find the phone, find the email, return a score. And I tell it what I mean by that score. Give me a numerical score of the applicant's fitness for the role, 1 being lowest and 10 being the highest. And then provide me also a summary. 30-word summary describing the applicant's fitness for the role and most standout applicant attribute. Which it didn't necessarily tell me which one was the most standout, but it did highlight a meaningful attribute in the last sentence of both of those. And then I passed along an example. This JSON structure is going to be part of the response. So when the model returns the data, it's going to give it to me in this format, and then I'm going to process it as JSON in my code and send it along with some other fields for error handling and other things back to AppSheet. So it's going to be nested down in a bigger data structure when I send it back to AppSheet. And I'll tell you a little pro tip about that here in a second. This is the function. Compare resume and JD, 4 parameters. It's pretty straightforward, except for this step right here. Get file data from Drive. So the images, or if you're going to pass along images or PDFs, you have to first convert those. You have to find them first. AppSheet won't like give you the file in any type of interaction with AppSheet. It'll give you the location of the file or the name, and then you have to go find it and actually pull the data and then convert that data to base 64 and then send it through in this format. So your payload to the Vertex API is going to have parts, and this is how many things are in your multimodal prompt. This can be kind of an unlimited number of things. I have 2 inline data objects for my job description and resume, and then my text prompt. And then I send it, and it returns something looking like this with other things that Gemini tells me that are just API related things. All right, Cam, you want to pop back to the slides and we'll go over some of the technical challenges that people usually face when doing these types of calls. So technical challenge number 1, getting files from AppSheet to Vertex. As I mentioned before, when you create you upload a file in an AppSheet app, what happens behind the scenes is that AppSheet takes that file, converts it on the client, sends it to the AppSheet server, and loads it into your file store. So whether that is Google Drive or SharePoint or Office 365 or a cloud storage bucket, it's saving that somewhere. And it's not keeping it in the AppSheet data set per se. So when I request data via API or send anything from AppSheet to some other thing like an app script, I can't actually send the file data. There's not an expression that allows me to convert a file column's value into base 64, like the actual bits of information about that image. It just passes along the reference for that thing. So I had to create a helper function in my app script. If you're looking at the code yourself, it will be in the utilities file. And I have this function called get file from Drive. It takes a file name and it takes a parent folder. So what's the Google Drive folder that this will exist in? And what's the name of the file? The reason I have the parent folder or I ask for that is because if your Google Drive has lots of files, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, your search is going to take a lot longer if you're searching over the full drive contents, and it's possible you could even find a duplicate. So to make it more reliable, if it's loaded through an AppSheet app, you always know what folder it's going to land in because AppSheet creates these folders. So I just got that folder ID, and you can see in the picture at the top in my function parameters, you can see for the resume file folder and the job description file folder, I have cut and pasted the actual file ID that I pulled from the URL. I just navigated to that drive folder and then looked at the URL, and the ID is inside of that URL, and I just pasted it in there. And then I pass along the file names. So in lines 50 and 52, first, when you pass a file name through AppSheet, it comes in with the folder name / file name, which maybe you could use to like do a more complex search or a more dynamic search. So you wouldn't have to tell the function what folder it came from. You could pull it from the name of the file that AppSheet sends through, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted a little more reliability. So I parse out just the file name, and then I do a search. So I have this Google Drive folder already defined, and then I do a search files method with the title containing the name of this file. And then I have a file iterator on line 55. If files.hasNext, then get the next file and convert it to a blob file type, and then encode that in base64 so I can send it across an HTTP call. And so that just returns a really long text string that represents the base64 encoding of all of the bytes of data in that file. And that's what the model expects to have. Catherine Julio had a question. Do they have to be the same PDF format? The answer is no, they don't have to be the same PDF format. So the model, whatever you give the model, it will try to understand. Some PDFs have images baked into them. So like instead of representing text specifically, it like turns it into an image, and Gemini can even reason against that image, right? It'll detect that that's an image, try to understand it, and then use it in its reasoning in the prompt. Now, the second technical challenge is structuring the multimodal prompt. And this might also answer part of your question, Catherine. Cameron, you want to bounce to the next slide? Thank you, brother. So I showed you this a second ago, but you can send all sorts of data to Gemini's prompt. You can send photos, you can send videos, you can send audio, you can send documents, and text. So I haven't experimented with sending audio or video. I just kept it, a little bit straightforward for the sake of a demo, and just did a PDF. So the MIME type here, I think, is the same for all PDFs. I'm not totally sure, but that's a quick Google, and you could figure that out. So you have to tell it what type of data it is with the MIME type, and then you will send the base64 data along with it. You could also, if the data lives in a Google Cloud Storage bucket on the same project that you have deployed your Vertex API on, you could just pass the file extension for that Google Cloud Storage bucket. There might be a couple other things you adjust here, but it saves a step of having to convert it first, right? The Vertex AI could go and look and find that in your GCP project and use that data instead. So I just duplicate the same object model as many times as I need for the files that I want it to consider. And then I have my final text prompt at the end that explains what I want it to do with those files. There's also other ways to sort of set the context or operate system instructions for the model, different than a text prompt. Mine's not that complicated, so I didn't need all those things. And I kind of used the default generation configurations, but I just limited my max output tokens, so I didn't, get an overly large response and waste money on my model. So that one took me a little bit of research to get the exact format for sending multiple files, but it's actually pretty easy once all said and done. And the third technical challenge, which is actually a really cool pro tip for AppSheet, is extracting a JSON object inside of AppSheet. So when you talk to an API, whether that's through a Google App Script or you use a like a webhook outside of AppSheet, you can return a response. That response is almost always going to be some JSON object. So Cam, you want to hit me with the next one? James, quick question. I may have missed this, but what licenses do I need to do this in AppSheet? I'm pretty positive you can use core licenses to run the AppScript task. I don't think it's I don't think it requires enterprise licenses. You're on mute, Cam.
I'll look that up real quick in the background.
Okay, perfect.
Just make sure that that bot is enabled for non-core or for core only. Core and up.
So when you return something from an API, you can tell AppSheet what type of data it is. And if it is a JSON object, you can select object, or if it's an array, you could, that would be like a list of objects or a list of things inside of it. You can use dot notation to extract or go lower in the, basically the data schema of that object. So at the top level, I have a few things that come out of my return object that I send back to AppSheet. I have a results key, I have an error key, and I have an error message key. And then inside the results key, I have exactly what I asked from Vertex, which is the name, phone, email, score, and summary. And also a key, which I don't remember exactly what that one is. But the way you get that like lower level data or you dig into the object inside of AppSheet is when you name the fields that you want to bring in, you actually just use regular JSON dot notation. So you could use, brackets and numbers to work through an array or get things that are nested fairly deep down. And that just becomes the name of the column, but AppSheet maps it somehow to the JSON object that it's returning, and you can kind of pull that data out. It doesn't have to be extremely simple, right? So I haven't seen any documentation for this on AppSheet's documentation website, but I saw one of the developers, Landon, do it on a project, and I was like, are you kidding me? You can actually dig down and access nested objects inside of objects in a complex API response in AppSheet. This is wild. Why is there no documentation for this? But really helpful, especially when you can't control the response of an API. So those are my 3 tips. Again, on the next slide, we've got all this code available for you on this GitHub repository. Follow that link. It'll get you there, as well as instructions for how to clone this app. Oh, Cam, you're on the mutes.
I said a full paragraph. So I have a quick question for you. A lot of our viewers seem to have questions about this, seem to might have gears turning on how they could use something like this, even though they're likely not recruiters or employers. So what other use cases for something like this can you think of immediately? For me, while you think about that, what comes to mind first for me is like if you get invoice from another company, that invoice is likely a completely different format for each company that you receive invoices from. And so just receiving an invoice and throwing into this app, and you probably can intelligently pull the name, the total value, maybe create sub like child JSON objects for line items and those line item values. And from there, just like create a full normalized invoice record inside of your own app based off of just a paper invoice that was sent to you. And then you probably could match it up with the list of your users and the database of your users and of your like clients and stuff like that, or business relationships, and have it guess which client this invoice is from, and probably notify the company if notify a manager or something like that if the invoice is greater than a certain value. Just have my gears turning a lot of cool
Yeah.
ideas on.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool things that you can do. That idea in particular is actually the next demo I'm working on. So
Wow, sneak peek.
great minds, right? The next one will be an invoice extractor. So getting a high level object and then nested things out of a document. And I'm going to see how well it works. I've had several requests for kind of open-ended OCR, optical character recognition use cases. And traditional OCR technology requires you to have predefined the regions of the document, what they mean. And like you said, if that document comes in looking different or is totally different, it can't reason with that. It's not a reasoning type of artificial intelligence. It just understands and deciphers character by character what's going on in the document or the organization of the document. It doesn't even try to understand fully. So this is an opportunity for LLM type of AIs to kind of supersede the capabilities of OCR. And I'm going to test and see how well it works. So that'll be the next demo. Invite me back. I'll show you.
Let's
The cool
go.
stuff.
I'm
Whatever I
also
find
just
out.
thinking of like if you had your tax advisor or the accountant at your business, and they're just determining um, what of your expenses are deductible. Um, and you could just have if you're like a tax advisor, you could just have your customers scan their receipts, and it would itemize the receipt into individual records, child records of a receipt, um, parent record, and then it could probably categorize
Yeah.
what each of the items are. Because I was going through receipts at my mom's house because she's moving out, and she we're like talking about like if this is like tax deductible or whatever, and it's like back when she had a business, and it's like half of the purchases are for her business and half the purchases are for herself. And so it's hard just to upload the full receipt and be like, oh, I need this tax deducted. But
Yeah.
if it can actually determine the individual line items, those are tax deductible. And if you could just like quickly check yes, no, if you're requesting for it to be deducted, and your advisor reviews it, that'd be awesome. So there's tons of ideas right off the bat. Super cool use case stuff. And
Thanks, bro. Well, you've got some cool stuff to show us too. A really amazing AppSheet UI hack that is pretty good game changer. Tell us about it.
yeah, so I'll go ahead and just share my screen for a demo first. But as you can see, I'm gonna show you guys a cool UI way to quickly add records without going to like a full-fledged form. And these are child records for a parent from a parent record. And so I went ahead and built an app around a single feature. And so imagine this app being a fully fledged project management app with all the bells and whistles. And in this instance, I'm just highlighting this one feature. Um, So this project management app right here, we see that we have our list of projects that are separated by and grouped by the company who is the client of the project. So we see Amazon, we have a customer satisfaction app that we're building. For Google, we have a Gemini marketing scheduler, a YouTube versioning log, and for Nike, we have a warehouse inventory app. So right here, you can see the amount of hours, the total estimated hours of remaining tasks. And so a project manager would be able to look at this and know a backlog of, hey, we currently have 2 hours on the clock of requested items. Maybe we should just go ahead and knock it out. We're not in too good standing right now with Amazon. And so it would just be nice just to clear our plate and get that down to 0 and let them know that we're waiting on them for tasks.
Yep.
And so we have the project manager view. We have a developer view, so where they can see their own tasks. And then maybe if you complete your tasks, you want to go the extra mile and help out a friend with tasks. And so I can here see Stefan's tasks, Will's tasks, and so on, regardless if they're assigned to me or not. And I can go ahead and work on them, complete them. Both of the task views use this little card view and just summarizes the card. That way you maybe don't have to open up a detailed view each time. So it shares information like the title of the task, the estimated amount of hours, a description if it is needed. Some descriptions, some tasks just are straightforward. I think down here, we mentioned BigQuery, but we also mentioned that BigQuery has a limitation of it has to have less than 100,000 records. And so maybe the PM threw in information like that of extra definition for the contact. But you're able to complete it right from here. So you hit complete and it removes it from these remaining tasks. So to get into the actual demo of what is cool that I built is let's go over here and you can do this. As you can see, this task is right here. Also, this add task button is right here on the detail view as well. What this allows you to do is from here, you can go ahead and say, I'm the project manager and I just got an email from Google saying, hey, they want a new feature inside this app. And let's say they said there's a bug with the video label. So we'll say bug where label for video table is the unique ID. So it's just showing an 8-character ID, randomized character ID for the
I've
label
never seen
of
that
that
bug
table.
before.
Nope,
Customers
me
never
either.
told me. That drop down just
And
has
so-
letters and numbers in it. Why doesn't it? What does that mean?
Yep.
Sorry, checkbox problem. My bad.
So this is a quick fix. There's no, like, as developers, we know exactly what it is. Stefan just said it. It's a single checkbox. Let's do 0.1 hour for that. It's about 6 minutes or so. Owner, I'm gonna go ahead and pawn this off to Will.
That's right.
And hit save.
Get some work.
And then if we go ahead and go to YouTube, we see that it added that task right there. And if we go to all tasks and we go down to YouTube versioning log, we see that there's a task to complete right there.
So in the middle of the screen, there was a form input, but usually that comes out on the side or takes up the whole screen. How did you get it to show up in the middle like that?
Yeah, so there's an AppSheet for a few years has been this function called the input function that has been since deprecated and replaced with that input feature. And this input feature, we've talked about in previous episodes. Our Landon Quartermont has spoken on it and has given a little bit of more of a tutorial on how it works over like a holistic perspective of how it works. I wanted to go into what's a specific use case of this that you can use. And so the feature, so if you're ever wanting something to show up whenever, like if you want a pop-up like that, just know the feature that you're looking for is going to be the input feature. And so you can type in on YouTube input feature AppSheet, and you should be able to learn all about it. And so the whatever is up for if this is faster than a form or not. It is a nice UI. It not taking up the full screen or taking away from the stuff. What is a really good use case for the input feature is, let's just say you're in here and you want to add just a text note to, like, you want to add a note to a CRM or something like that. You can hit add note, type in the note, and hit save, and then you're moving on. And so maybe that's really good for when you're talking to a client and they're asking you to do something. You just need to add a note real quick while you're on that client's record. Super cool use case
Right.
of the input
Keeps
feature.
the user in context of the data that they're looking at.
Yeah. But what makes this novel is the input feature can only set values of a column that already exists for a record that already exists. And so I've had to do a little tweaking around to make it create a record based off these input values. And so the way I do that, I'll go ahead and talk about it. So right here, we have a 3-step action. And what this action is doing is it's a grouped action that's clicked. As we can see, it's the add task that is actually visible to the user and that is being executed. Whenever you click that action, it sets off 3 actions in order. And so the first action will be an add task input. So the step 1 is input. And what that does is it goes into the Google Sheet. So it goes into the record of the project you're on. So we were on YouTube version log right there. And it went to these 3 inputs and it set the values of those 3 inputs. And so at the time we typed in, there's a bug where the label for this table is showing up as the ID. It set this to 0.1, and then it set this to the email of Will Giles. And all this is kind of a way to remediate the issue that you can only edit records. And so all we are doing is editing a record. And so now that we have from the input those 3 values in place, that's enough information for us to create a project with. Because we have the estimated hours, we have the owner. We know that the task that we're adding right now is not completed or canceled, and so we're setting it to in progress. The description you can add later if you need it. Title, we are using the input. The project, we know exactly what project it's coming from. Just imports this primary key. And then ID is unique generated. So we have everything we need just from those 3 inputs to quickly create our own record. And so that leads us to the second step, where it uses those 3 input fields from the project table to create a project task. And so we'll actually review what this looks like inside the app editor, so that way you guys can copy this for your own apps. And then last but not least, it clears out those 3 input fields so that the next time somebody comes to create a task, they're not starting off with the same task they added last time.
That's a really
All right,
creative
so let's
way
go ahead.
of solving that problem, right? You've got this issue
Mhm.
where doing anything across a different table is really complicated in AppSheet, right? You're at the project level. You need to make a change to tasks, or you may need to make a new task, and you want to have a rich experience, but you want to stay in context of the project because you're thinking about the project, not thinking about all of the tasks related to that project. And you actually kind of hack the system a little bit. You could put some task related fields on the project data table so that you could kind of just flash store them there and then access them all within the context of the project table. And then in the middle action, it's like, oh, just create a new record, add a new row to another table using values from this row, which is a pretty easy to use task function. So that's pretty creative.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. And so let's go ahead and see what that looks like inside the actual app editor. And so let's go ahead and hide the screen, the emulator. And so, as I said, we have a grouped action right here. Notice these are neatly named. If you're working on an app with anybody else, that is what you should do. It's incredible. So the way I do grouped actions is I have the same title for the grouped action as I do for all the child actions inside of it, so that whenever someone else comes into the app, you can quickly figure out what actions where. If you also establish what steps they are, it also makes that super easy. But the best part about it is whenever you go to this page, you see all them grouped together, and you don't have to do all this searching to find the actual steps. And so right here, I have the input one. And so a little instruction on how to do this. You want to go ahead and lay out the 3 columns that you're using for your input on your parent record. And I went ahead and created, for me, the input title, input estimated hours, input owner. And then I created little acronyms for each of those tables. And so for the value I'm putting into that table is I'm doing input, which is the thing that actually calls the input pop-up. And then I have IT, which just stands for input title. And then for input estimated hours, I have IEH and IO. If you just do this, AppSheet's not going to know what to do with it at all. And so you have to actually scroll down to this thing. This is advanced. And on the advanced, you're actually able to add what those acronyms actually are. And so this means that this is going to be what populates into here. And the type, the data type that is being passed. And so if you select, like right here, owners are ref to the user table on input owner. But right here, I have text because ref is not an option. Ultimately, the ID of the reference, the table that we're referencing, is a text object. And so I just have it set to text. Whereas estimated hours is a decimal of hours. And so I have decimal selected. All right. So after you have, for each of these, you have the inputs. And for each of these, you have the corresponding ones. As you can see, I have that shown in this slide right here of how this top one individually corresponds to the top input down below. It just keeps it clean, makes it pretty obvious. You could also do other things, like you could dereference if I don't know if you could actually do that, but you could dereference, and not all of these values have to store an input function. They can use other information that you can find in other ways other than input. So this actually creates the child record, or sorry, this gathers the information from the pop-up. Step 2 is it uses that information from the project table that we just added, those 3 fields, to assign the values of their corresponding fields inside the child table. And so input title goes into title, input estimated hours goes into estimated hours, and so on. We know the project ID is the ID of the project, and then we know the status is going to be in progress. So that's super easy. Notice that all 3 of these child records are all hidden. We don't want any of these actions to be invoked outside of the full group. And so then last, we have the reset, which just goes into there and resets those 3 columns for next time they're used. You do this just by doing quotation marks or single ticks and just put nothing inside of it. And it sets it to null. All right. And then I was not sharing my screen for that. I'll go ahead and share the last one. So step 2, is inputting the input title into title, estimated hours into estimated hours, and so on, into the corresponding column of its child's record. And so once you're done with that, you go to step 3. And step 3 actually removes those values out. That way, next time you go back, it's cleared out for the next task. As I was mentioning, all these subtasks, all 3 of them, are marked as hidden because I don't want them to be invoked outside of the group being invoked.
Love that when you have an action that's supposed to be hidden and you forget to hide it, and then users start pressing this thing and weird data stuff's happening in your app. And you're like, how did this happen? You go in there and you're like, oh gosh, I should have hidden it. There's 12 actions and I missed one.
And they a lot of times just look like a little paper airplane.
Yep.
And you're like, that's just the default icon. And so I went ahead and listed out a few common mistakes that people have whenever they use the input function. And so number 1, if you're redoing this for your use case, maybe you're doing a project management app, maybe you're adding a notes field to a CRM, maybe you're adding a photo as input, or you're doing something cool. And you all of a sudden start running into bugs. I created this part of the video just to maybe help you out a little bit. So the first thing we're going to cover is the input pop-up is coming up, but the fields aren't appearing. And so I can actually cause that to happen right now. So if I go into projects and hide, let's say owner.
It's not sharing.
Hit save.
Yep.
All right.
Hit that screen share. There you go.
So I just went into here and I just hid input owner. And so what it's going to do is when I invoke that action, owner is no longer showing up. And so make sure that you remember that the set actions, that the set values that show up in the input are based off of these 3, not necessarily these 3 down here. Because if this input owner is hidden, the dropdown for input owner won't show up, even though this input right here is there. Kind of interesting. And so now, so the first error that you might have is fixed by making sure those fields are actually visible within the app. Next, the input field is a text, but I want it to be a dropdown. So that's a very similar issue as the first one. It all derives from this field right here, from the actual parent record field. And so if, let's say this was a text right here, input owner was a text. So if I change it to text and make it visible again, hit save. Then preview the app, click in here. Now owner is just a text. And you're like, well, I don't want to type in Cameron at crewtech.com each time. I want it to be a dropdown. Issue for you that is likely a situation is the data type of the column that you're changing. So make sure that you have this as a ref or an enum or whatever you need it to be for it to be a dropdown. So this is a reference to users. Hit done, hit save. And so now when I click into here, it's a dropdown of users. The third thing I see is error in step 2 when you add a task. And so let's say you're invoking the grouped action, and in step 2, it's causing an error. So thinking back, step 2 is the action where it's actually creating the child record. And so the issue with this is that on these 3 records right here, on the 3 input records you have right here, what is likely the issue is that the valid if for these 3 do contradict the valid if for the 3 inside of here that it's setting it with. And so just make sure the valid if lines up, because if I'm over here selecting, let's say on project tasks, we only want them to be able to choose employees that are developers. And then on the input, we're allowing them to choose any input, any user. And so let's go ahead and say I type in a PM on the pop-up, a project manager on the pop-up, but then it tries to actually create the record and it says, I can't create this record. It has a project manager where it's expecting um, a developer role.
Yep.
And so just make sure that the input columns have the same valid if or corresponding valid ifs that work with the actual project tasks valid ifs. You have any questions?
You know, I open up to the chat for sure. Would love to hear from the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Why do the input versus in desktop mode, you can, or desktop preview, you can have
Open
the
on the
form
side.
experience on the slide out on the side. So
like this.
Just again, help me explain why this is, a different slot on the Swiss Army knife.
I think sometimes some users of AppSheet just want to feel something different. I think that sometimes our director of DevOps talks about the idea of context switching. And sometimes it's nice just to invoke an action from here without being thrown around all these different screens.
Yeah.
Like you said, it opens up on the side. How much different is doing it from a form right here from doing it from a form right here? Not a huge difference. I think that it's nice that this only has the 3 fields, but there's no reason why you couldn't do it with this right here on the 3 fields only. So at the end of the day, it's mostly just that feel of the pop-up in the center. Looks nice, feels nice for desktop mode.
Yeah.
For if you're running the legacy desktop mode, maybe you have an app that you've been using for 3 years or 2 years, and you don't have this set up and you're scared to switch it because you think you might break something, go ahead and try this. It's a cool way to do a pop-up without having to do all sorts of without having to switch over to the new desktop mode.
Yeah.
If you're doing mobile, it's a experience that you can't experience otherwise on mobile, and so allows you to stay in context of the parent record, adding child records. And yeah.
Are there any field types that don't work on the input?
I am not entirely sure.
I've never tried a show column in input.
I mean, maybe we have another on the future episode of this. We just have input Mythbusters and just have
fun.
Can it do it? Let's see, just right here, what the options are for the major data types. So advanced. So we have date, time, decimal, duration, list, long text, number, percentage. So I don't see anything like XY. I don't see anything like photo,
show column,
or file, or show column. And so even though I don't see those things, I don't see ref and allowed me to use ref. And so definitely interested in seeing that. Maybe in a future episode, I can extend and do some input feature Mythbusters.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
James had a question. Do you guys think that Gemini AI could use an image of a shipping label to extract and fill a row to track an inbound shipment? I'm assuming that you're getting this through another image that already exists, right? Because AppSheet has a barcode scanner. So being able to scan from a scan tool attached to your computer or using the camera on a mobile device, you can already do that pretty well. It supports a lot of different scanning types of scanning. But assuming you don't have that option, right? You're given a list of images already from some other system. I don't know. I've never seen a use case where AppSheet's been used or Gemini's been used to read barcodes. So I'm going to guess no, that it wouldn't figure it out because it's not something that's a reasoning. It's not understanding the context of the image. I think it would have to have additional functionality to interpret the barcode.
Yeah, I wonder if, because there is ultimately some sort of logic assigned to barcodes and assigned to QR codes and stuff like that. And so, does Gemini understand that logic in a way that it can actually decode the value, URL, whatever that's behind? Does Gemini read barcodes? That's interesting. I'm searching that right now. I don't know if I'll get an answer. But I do think that maybe the better solution, I mean, I imagine you could get an API. You could get Gemini to identify the barcode, and you get a barcode scanning API,
Yeah.
and then connect that to AppSheet, AppScripts, and then AppScripts connects to an API of, I mean,
Okay.
stuff like, there's a lot of shipping apps.
Yeah. James is saying it's not so much the barcode as the information on the barcode or on the label itself, which yes, it should be able to extract the details, text details in context of that image and recognize, oh, that's an address. That's somebody's name. It should definitely be able to do that.
Yeah, I should be able to do OCR on an image and then do inference on what it thinks those values are.
Yeah,
for sure. Sweet. Well, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to type them in the chat. I'll stick around for a little bit longer and might be able to respond to you. But also, we thank you so much for attending our Planet Workspace third episode. It's been a blast, and hope you guys join us for our next one. Catch you guys later.
Thanks, guys.